Kimball, Crossley, and welcome to our first postseason edition of Talking Paw Sox. Again, we're coming to you from the Pawtucket Red Sox bullpen, although this might be the final time because it's going to get a little cold and we'll have to find another location. But it's a great day today. The ballpark's empty, the season's over, and I've got Mike Tamburro, the president of the club, and to his left, Ben Mondor, the owner of the club. All right, guys, where do you want to start? Why don't we start still talking about the season you had? You finished one game under 500 during the regular season, but you made the playoffs, and I know you've got to be really happy about that.
I don't think there's any doubt that the way this club finished certainly made us proud. I think that, any time that you make the playoffs, you feel good for the fans, and especially the way this club came down the stretch. I mean, we won 20 of our last 26. I think we had one time we had come as close to last place as a half a game out. And to turn it around, come home strong, make the playoffs, and really play Scranton 3 very tough games. And then, of course, what could have been a blowout in game 4, we battled back and showed some character. And I think this ball team is very proud.
Yeah, Ben, maybe give us more of the emotional reaction, because I know you get pretty emotionally involved in that last game. Was that a bit tough when you fell down 7-0 in the first inning?
Not really. Not really. It hurts, but no, if I may, Kimball, I was listening to your introduction, first post game. That word postseason, that postseason always has a bittersweet feeling. It means it's all over for another year. As you know, going to Scranton, Mike and I were talking, would you believe it's our 16th season here? 16 years we're completing here, and we think back to the kids who came through here 16 years ago, and in the interim in between, and some of them went on to greatness, and some went home, and some to bitter disappointments. And it's a picture of life that's really unattainable anywhere else, and that's why it gets the bittersweet memories of. You can't help it when you sit down on a day like this, and the stands are empty, and to someone looking, sure, the stands are empty, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of noise the way I'm looking at it, and a lot of scenes up there, and I'm seeing J.J. Cannon doing 2 of the greatest catches I've ever seen on the center field wall in the '77 All-Star game, and I'm seeing Dave Coleman in '78 crashing through one of these panels. And, I'm seeing gargantuan home runs hit here, and I'm seeing the fellas fooling around as they are, just little boys in the long pregame before the stadium gates opened for batting practice, and I could go on endlessly what I'm seeing out there. And yes, it's postseason, and yes, it seems quiet, but I'm hearing an awful lot of noise.
Wow, it sounds like this is your own little field of dreams, and you do this a lot during the off-season as you stroll out here when it's all empty and relive the memories, huh? Well, let's go back. One of the things I want to do on the show is talk about the misconceptions about minor league baseball. Everyone's always asked me, like, well, is this club owned by the Red Sox, this and that, and maybe we can clear up some of those and talk about some of these things. And let's go back to when you first took over this club. You two, I guess you came in as the owner, Ben, and really it's been a complete turnaround from that day to now.
I'll be very honest with you, Kimball, is when Mike and I came here, it was January 28, '77. Bitter cold. And after walking through here alone, just the 2 of us, I guess it's like a fella saying he's going to get married, and the morning of the wedding he gets the shakes a little bit. It's a very natural thing. Well, we were walking through here, and I said to myself, what the hell did I get into? This was not anything you'd send a postcard home to Mama about when we walked in here, and it went downhill from there. I mean, seriously downhill. And it was an awesome bankruptcy. And there was only one way to do it. We met everybody head on, faced on, and told them, hey, look, this wasn't our bankruptcy, and we had nothing to do with it, and we'll do everything we can, and we want to do business with you. But it wasn't easy. These first 2 or 3 years were, at times, extremely discouraging. I mean, now you saw the other night there, we were playing a playoff game in Scranton, and they had standing room and what, about 10,800 in there, something like that, jam full, a beautiful $27 million stadium. We came in here and we won the pennant in '77. We had 236 people here. You couldn't get your mother to come here on that bet. Yeah, a lot of creditors banging on the door. Not our creditors, but I mean from the past few years. And it was almost, if you didn't live it, I think it's almost impossible to transmit what we went through with these first years. I mean, we couldn't buy baseballs. We offered cash up front and said, look, we'll deposit cash with you, and when we get down to the last 1,000, we'll put more cash up front. It was that bad. The reputation was that bad. So when you say that 7-0 lead, how in the first inning did it hurt? Oh, yes, it hurt. But it wasn't what we went through 16 and 17 years ago.
What was there a key to the turnaround?
Well, let me see. What would you say, Mike? A key to the turnaround?
I think the key to the turnaround is the key to any successful business. It's just hard work. I mean, you know, people think that a lot of fans think that this time of year we're gone. You know, that we go away at the end of the season and we come back on opening day. We're in Florida for the whole winter. We go to spring training and then live the good life. People don't realize that this is a full-time front office staff that's here. Basically, right now, it's 1993. We're working on the 1993 season. We're here 40 hours a week and probably another 10 or 15 nights just being out in the community with players. Our Bill Wanless, our PR guy, Ben, Lou Schweckheimer, myself, just doing the things in this community that have to be done. And I think really there's not one event or one string of events or one particular moment that we can say the franchise turned around. I think that it's been constant building year after year, paying the dues, putting the time in, that has finally gained the great acceptance that this franchise has really gained. But that doesn't mean that the work stops. That we sit back on our laurels. I mean, to me, now the challenge of the operation is to prove that we can take it to the next step, that we can become a little bit better, and that's what we're going to work on.
Well, it brings to mind a couple of things. I mean, you talk about how it's been a step-by-step process, and I think one of the best examples of that is that for the last 6 years now, each year you've just a little bit improved on your attendance, and you keep setting new records, and that's just a real momentum thing going there. We talked about it a little with Lou, but that must have made you guys feel great, especially this year when you knew you had a bad schedule attendance-wise coming in because you had a lot of early games when it's cold and the kids aren't out of school.
Nobody realized how bad that schedule really was. I mean, you're going to have a bad one, a medium one, a so-so, on a good side and a good one every 5 years, and that's pretty good. But this was atrocious. As you know, April and May, the kids are in school, and you know the weather up here, Kimball, as well. I mean, I've seen you with double layers of jackets and sweaters and 2 pairs of socks here on those April nights, just like the rest of us. Not that you're different, just like the rest of us. And it's not conducive to come and sit around with the kids at a ball game. But this year, when we looked at the schedule, I'll tell you, my heart skipped a beat last January. The last month of the season, 28 days, because it ended on the 8th of September, we played home only 9 days. Prime time. Since the All-Star game, which is a traditional, everybody says halfway. Halfway for the major leagues, but for the minor leagues, like 60%, 62% away. Now, you've got all of July, all of August, and the early part of September. Now, that is prime time. We played home only 2 homestands, one at 12 and one at 9, only 21 days in prime time, which means that we played of our scheduled game, 144 or 72. We played 51 before the All-Star game, and the tough days, and only 21 after. When I saw that, I said, my God, we're going to take a dive in attendance and so forth. And for all the winter work and the cohesion of putting all this together in the groups and what have you, the boys work hard, very hard, and the gals too. And to break another attendance record for like the 6th year in a row, we were at 362 last year. We were at 374, 370 something this year. It is awesome under those circumstances. Actually awesome.
And I think the other thing I was thinking of the attendance is talking about a key turning point is some point you guys early in this organization made a decision that I guess, it's typical for ball parks to be a place where a lot of people go and booze it up and it gets kind of raucous, but you guys said we're going to lose maybe some of those fans and think long term and try and get a happier, more family atmosphere. How did you guys do that?
Well, it's Mike. This is the way we wanted it. This is the way. I want to go to a ball game or the theater, any place else, and I want to have my wife come down with the kids, even if she's alone with the kids, not be bothered, enjoy it to the extent she wants to enjoy it, be completely safe. And we made up our mind, but to do it that way, we wouldn't touch anything else. And Mike set the tempo to that, and he can tell you all about it on the very first night in '77.
Oh yeah, very first night in '77. I mean, we knew that we had to lay the law down in this operation, and we had a ball player who we found out afterwards had a couple of busloads of friends come down from nearby Massachusetts.
He lived that.
And about the fifth inning of the ball game, there was a lot of silence up on the first base side. He was a first baseman. And he didn't know what happened to his friends, and we'd run 2 busloads of people who were a little bit rowdy, a little bit out of control, because that's not the atmosphere that we felt we wanted to create here if we were going to be successful long term. You know, I think the other thing is that we realized early on that the major corporations and that the diehard fans in this area. We're dedicated Boston Red Sox fans, and so aren't we. But we knew that clientele was already taken care of, and we had to find our niche in this marketplace, and we found that niche to be young families. What we've tried to do and what we've tried to build this operation around is youngsters, where the dreams begin. I mean, you hear that a lot. That's our motto. And people quickly think that's because of the players on the field. They're all dreaming to go to Boston. Yes, that's true. But it also is the fans. We believe that this is where the youngsters' dreams begin. Their love affair with the game of baseball in New England perhaps begins here now. I think that if you look around our stadium, any summer's night, 40 to 50% of this crowd are kids probably under 14. That's our market. I mean, it's almost become a little theme park, and baseball's the theme, and we want to do all we can for the youth of this area, to get them involved in this game, to teach them this game, to let them learn to appreciate this game, and boy, it's been returned to us 4 and 5 times.
That sums it up very well. That's exactly it, Kimball.
All right.
But see, the game of baseball, the great American of baseball, it's a family oriented. It's apple pie and dinosaur and Chevrolet, and you remember that commercial? No, you're too young. You wouldn't. You're just a little kid. But you come to McCoy, and people from other cities tell us, the managers and the front office personnel who come to visit tell us, my God, your crowd is different from all the other pies. You are very family oriented. You see lap babies here. For Mike and I, what makes it especially interesting is the young people of 15, 16, 17 years and are now coming and they're married. Yeah. And they have their kids with them. And we get to know all about the kids and their birthdays and when they get married. And that's tremendous to have that evolution starting to turn now. In a few years, 5, 6 years down the road, we'll have the second generation. And that speaks well of the sustaining support this ballpark gets.
I'll tell you just one more thing quick. And I think it's still a thrill for all of us here. 16, 17 years later now, to come out here on a Saturday afternoon to the clinics, and I think that you've been to a couple of the clinics, and to see the kids on the field with the players. I mean, that's the essence of Paw Sox baseball. That's what it's all about, and we get a special thrill every time we have one of those.
Well, if I could add, I'm sorry, could I add just one more thing to it? An inside story to that is 10 years ago. And she had the photographs, the snapshots to prove it. A little girl, red-haired girl with pigtails came here to a clinic, feeling the ball on the infield from Brooklyn, Connecticut, convinced her dad she wanted to come to those clinics, and he brought her up. With a few friends, she came. And this year, about a month ago, after serving her second internship, graduated from college in Florida. She's now on staff full-time. That's Kate Backus.
Yeah, that's a true story. Yeah.
Well, I'll say this to wrap up this aspect of our little interview, that it's not Disneyland here. I mean, we're saying all this, but I will say that it's still a place where, like, a lot of people like the other side, and you can still hear a good heckle now and then and stuff like that. Yeah. But we should wrap up a couple of things that I want to talk about, and maybe Mike, you'll handle this. The misconceptions I spoke of earlier at the top of the interview. first of all, maybe you might be able to, you know the misconception I'm talking about more than me because you probably get the same questions. Talk about just what you do in the off season when you mentioned that earlier, and how, you know, who runs this club and stuff like that.
Well, I'm not a fighter, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to use a bat to hit the first person who says, well, you guys go home next April now.
Really, you know, the off season, you basically concern yourself with doing the things to improve this ballpark. I mean, we're going to be out here making improvements to the physical plant. We've got a lot of different things that we want to continue to improve physically. I think it's also the time of year where you begin all your advertising. Lou Schweckheimer and Mike Gwynn and the sales staff are going to be out there trying to create interest in program and yearbook and season tickets. We negotiate our radio and TV contracts with Nesson and with the radio network that's headed by WARA. So those are the things that we really put our minds to. Basically, the contracts and the player side of it is more or less handled by Boston this time of year. So that's that in a nutshell is some of the goings on in
The
the
physical
off-season.
part. Now you're going to winterize this entire ballpark. You've got 3 months' work there, back-breaking work, a whole bunch of fellas every year. You know, just a little thing, just a very little thing. You realize how many? You realize how many hundreds of feet, thousands of feet of piping has to be all blown dry and filled with pressed stone for the winter? Because you see, it's an inside enclosure, but it's outside in a sense, because all the piping in the stadium. And all that has to be, that reversal has to be done next March for April. The grass, I mean, you have all these people coming in with tons of various dusts and sprays to get the winter thick growth, to get that inverted growth so that you stop the permafrost underneath from coming too high. All the clay and all the baselines has to be dug out and put away because they'll turn like cement.
In about 3 weeks, we're gonna come in here and we're gonna dig that whole skin out and replace it, and probably come in with some new turf and replace a lot of the turf that's been dug up and cut up during the course of the season.
Okay.
Then there's the business of business. I mean, our fiscal year is October 31st. All the business of the season has to be brought down. We have Blue Cross and taxes and overhead and everything else like everyone else. Then there's the normal, you know, you get 400,000 people guests in your house. It's got to take a wear and tear. Now you've got to pick up behind them and do all of that. And then there's the team equipment, and then there's all the traveling to close down before you open next year's. It's endless. These boys work hard all summer. And you ask anyone on staff, they say, you know, the season, like, you're here all the time. Ask them when you see these full houses next year, say, hey, this is a lot of work. And they'll all tell you the same thing. We work harder in the winter.
Wow. Well, you know, while we're talking about the field improvements, we talked about this at times, that you got some nails coming out of this wall over here. We got to pop those back in.
That's part of the process.
I just want to wrap it up with you, Mike, and tell me the whole thing about, obviously, everyone, the big question, where do they get their players, who pays the players? And you touched on this earlier, but Boston basically pays the salaries of the players and mostly decides who's going to be here, right?
Well, I mean, again, we're the AAA club of the Boston Red Sox. I mean, our job here is to develop players for Boston. That's our job. That's our role. We try and provide them the perfect situation and the perfect facility for them to develop their players in. Basically, I mean, it's up to the manager, and it's up to Ed Kenny, the farm director, Ed Castro, now the vice president in charge of minor leagues and development. To really go about the procurement of players for the lower levels, okay? And they work their way up the system. I mean, we will sit down with Boston several times during the course of this offseason and talk about what our needs are. And we work hand in hand with Boston. I mean, we understand that role. We are pure developers. And we're going to try and put the best ball club on this field we possibly can.
Okay, well, we got to wrap things up. I thank you both. Ben, we're not going to let you go on another tangent because we got to wrap it up. I thank you both. All right? And we'll be back with more of Talking Paw Sox after this.